नमस्कार सबैलाई।
A very good evening, everyone. I am Kenza Phoning, North Bengal Coordinator for National People's Party. On behalf of Kalimpong District Unit NPP, I welcome you all. I hope that today's interactive session, common platform, with the esteemed members from all sections of the civil society of Kalimpong, with the delegation led by Sri James P.K. Sambaju, Honorable Cabinet Minister, Power, Road and Civil Services, Government of Meghalaya, and also National General Secretary of National People's Party will engage in a fruitful and meaningful discussion. Before I give a gist of this meet common platform today, I would also like to introduce our own Sri Sasank Ghatraju, National Secretary, Minority Affairs, ex-MOS Nagaland, and also in charge North Bengal and Sikkim of the National People's Party. We District Kalimpong Unit wanted to organize this common platform meet. Our intention is totally apolitical. Though we are a political party, I sincerely request all the guests to not give it a political color. We are a young team and a young party in this region, and we thought that this meet could shed many ideas and productive suggestions both ways, socially, economically, politically and legally, for the benefit of our beloved place which we all call home, Kalimpong. Why common meet platform? Negativity is always fraught with no outcome. We should all join hands and think and work together positively for the benefit of our region, to ponder what did we really achieve in the past 3 decades, or did we lose out more than we had wished for, socially, economically, politically and legally. The need for a place is the same for every person belonging here, irrespective of caste, creed, religion and political motivation. So why not think and act together? Our main objective and goal for this meet, to have a meaningful sharing of ideas and fruitful discussion both ways to achieve a holistic betterment of a society in every way possible, not just in pen and paper. All knowledge is connected to all other knowledge. The fun is making the connection. Now I would request the Honorable Minister Sri James P.K. Sambaju to say a few words.
Thank you so much to the moderator of this program. First of all, a very, very warm good evening to everyone present here. Hajur Haru Sabailai, Mero Ani Meghalaya ko Taraf Bata Namaskar Cho. I'm really very deeply honored to be here in your midst and to see this gathering of such prominent citizens of Kalimpong. All of you are very, very senior, very respected individuals, and in terms of age, I'm very young, though my position may be that of a minister in the government of Meghalaya. But I must say this, that it gives me indeed a lot of pleasure and honor to be here in your midst. Um, as was mentioned, this forum that we all are here today participating in, the common platform organized by the party, is, let me iterate again, that this is apolitical, please do not misunderstand this as a political gesture. This is definitely something that for me, for a person who is visiting Kalimpong for the first time, this is a lovely opportunity for me to interact with each and every one of you, and as was mentioned, to share ideas. We are a very young party, as you all know. The National People's Party was formed very, very few years back, which is in the year 2012. All of you may be knowing my late father, the founder of our political party, the National People's Party, Mr. P.A. Sangma. Late P.A. Sangma, you all are well acquainted with him because he shared a very, very special bond and relationship with this whole area. And today, as his sons, our national president, who also happens to be the chief minister of Meghalaya, and me and my younger sister, who is the member of parliament in Lok Sabha, Srimati Agatha K. Sangma, we all share that same kind of passion of being with the people, interacting with people, discussing things on an intellectual, academic level, and we may be politicians, but today we seek to further the legacy which our late father left for us by reaching out to everyone. And today, this common platform which has been organized, I sincerely believe that it will be such a great opportunity for me, a learning experience for me. And although it sounds a little selfish, but I am very, very sure, be going back today with many ideas, with greater understanding of this region, of the kind of challenges that are being faced by this region. And we may be very bookish in our knowledge about what the challenges of this region is or are, but there's nothing better but to hear it from your very mouths of what exactly is the throbbing heart of Kalimpong and this entire region. So I don't want to take much time in talking too much just from my side. I would rather we have this session as a very interactive session, and it's really a pleasure for me to be here. This is the first time I'm visiting, and once again, really deeply honored and very grateful to each and every one of you who have come here. So thank you so much, Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Now I would also request Sri Shashank Bhatraji to say a few words before we move on to the question and answer session.
हजुरहरू सबैलाई आज यो मञ्चमा आइदिनु भएको लागि एउटा इन्टरेक्सनको लागि दरदिलबाट तपाईलाई हार्दिक स्वागत छ अनि मेरो नमस्कार छ। आज विशेष गरिकन हाम्रो what we wanted is basically we wanted an opportunity to be given to our people, our youth, and an interaction to happen, basically exchange of ideas and exchange of culture, where we would all benefit at the end of the day with a little bit of knowledge. And if there is anything that we have to learn from the state of Meghalaya also, today I think this is the best opportunity that we have in our hands, since we have our Honorable Minister who is here with us today. And besides saying that, besides politics also, there is so much to our land that we love so much. We call Kalimpong. There is so much to be done, and so much to be taken forward, especially for the younger generation, for the youth, and we seek such opportunities. I remember the days that I was in school in Kalimpong. I studied in St. Augustine School, Kalimpong. I have my good friend here, Nereus Mukia, who was not only my friend but my classmate also. So we always look for such opportunities where we could grasp a little bit of knowledge. We've been in the cities, we've been to different places, but today, when we get the opportunity in our own homeland, I think so everybody will be able to make the maximum of this opportunity and take back home something. Thank you very much. Wishing you all a wonderful evening.
Thank you very much, Sri Shashank Raju. If anybody from the guest would like to say a few words, you can raise a hand, we can give you an opportunity. Before we move into the question and answer session.
Maybe a both way.
Then we can have a question and answer session, okay? So we'll move to the question and answer session. If anybody wants to ask any question to our Honourable Minister, you can.
Us to interact with you. And my question to you is, it's law of land, and as per the Government of India Act 1935 and Order 1936, we had 36 excluded and partially excluded areas, and out of 35 such areas have become states in combination or individually. Darjeeling district is the last and the only remaining partially excluded area for obtaining that right. So since you belong to the state of Meghalaya, which is also a partially excluded area and became a state under SRC in 1972. So my question is, Darjeeling district also has a similar guarantee to demand a state or whatever applicable by the law. If it is so, will your political unit be able to undertake this issue with the central government for a permanent political solution? Thank you.
Appreciate it. Sorry, if I can just know your name, please.
My name is Paul.
Paul?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for that question, Paul. So we won't make it like this, like a press briefing or something like that, right? So we'll be very informal in my reply, and you can be very informal in whatever you ask me. This is, of course, a question most expected. So our reply to that is actually very simple. So I mentioned about my late father, Mr. P.A. Sangma. He, I think, is one of the very few leaders in the country who actually has been advocating for smaller states to bring administration closer to the people. He had the courage to stand up and say, yes, this is required. I mean, many people would say that's politically incorrect, but he didn't have the word politically incorrect in his dictionary. And he was very courageous in that sense that he would come out and say, yes, India needs to have smaller states. Now, 1935, the state reorganization committees, they started sitting and they started deciding. We got our statehood in 1972. You're absolutely right about that. And today, for us, towing that same line of thought which our late father was advocating, not just in forums like this, but on the floor of the parliament. He has been very vocal on this. And so that automatically makes our stand a very official stand. That yes, we are advocating for smaller states. And we believe that if, in my father's own words in parliament, if the United States of America can have 50 states, then India, why not? We are the second largest democracy in the world, and there is still room for us to have more states. So, to answer your question, yes, we are advocating for smaller states. We feel that that is a step in the right direction. Now, the State Reorganization Committee is something that is in the domain of the Government of India, and we have written to Honorable Prime Minister, our National President, Mr. Conrad Sangma, and we have written to the Ministry of Home Affairs for this long pending demand. And I think in a nutshell, to answer your question, yes, we are advocating smaller states.
More questions, anybody?
Welcome to Kalimpong. Since there are no questions, I'm just trying to break more ice, and this is more about your state than ours.
Okay.
Is your government going to concede the demand for ILP by the Federation of NGOs in Nagaland? That's question one. I'll have a supplementary question as well.
Because governments don't concede, you are empowered in a sovereign way, so governments don't concede. What we feel is there is a need for a mechanism, and especially so in a situation like COVID, right? So COVID was a very rude wake-up call, wherein you suddenly realize that you must have mechanisms to filter and to check on the kind of population that enters your state. So we feel that a strong mechanism is required. Now there is a demand for ILP in our state, and we as a government, we took a call and we took it to the assembly. It was voted, and this resolution was passed unanimously. So it basically shows that there is total unanimity in Meghalaya in terms of having the ILP in place. But having said that, the onus or the decision making of placing the ILP lies with the Government of India. So that matter is pending there, and we have to wait and watch how the union government takes a call on that.
Because as civil society members, we also keep toying with this idea once in a while, having such a thing like ILP, would it help us? Because we also talk about our identities and demographic changes here due to outside migration,
Yes.
and so on and so
Yes.
forth. So we still don't know whether that would be a step backwards or.
It's a very good question. It's a very good question because, see, at the end everything has its pros and cons, right? So we are very aware of the risks of having ILP in place. For us as a state, we largely depend on our revenue in terms of tourism. Now that would take a hit, if ILP were to, take its full effect. And so the pros and cons are there. So where do you balance it? Where do you draw the line as to ensure that your land, your community is protected, and at the same time economically it does not affect you adversely? So I think it's all a question of that balance or that line which you try to draw. It's never going to be perfect, but yes, it has its pros and its cons, and I think it's for the people to decide. In a democracy, it's power to the people. Whatever the people decide, no matter if it's right or if it's wrong, or no matter if there are good results or bad results, only time will tell. But at the moment, it's power to the people.
Thanks.
I'm from Kalimpong, Vijay Sipuri. Hello, sir.
Hi.
So can I ask you one thing?
Yeah,
What the main problem or the very issue that we're having here, let's say Gokaland or a separate state.
Yeah.
Well, in spite of all the efforts we are doing, or let's say everybody's doing, it's not happening. In your view, what would be the reasons, or why do you think it's not happening, it's not becoming? And this will be the ticket to your party, the answer.
No, not at all.
Mr. Joy Chikapoti.
Mr. Joy. Yeah. So, Mr. Joy, it's a very valid question, and let me just place on record, I don't mind taking uncomfortable or difficult questions. That's the reason why I'm here to, talk to you very, very informally, albeit. But here I think that when you ask about, why is it not happening or is it going to happen? The struggle for the state of Telangana, that's been one of the longest troubles, one of the longest challenges that, people of Telangana have faced. A lot of people have lost their lives, unfortunately, in that struggle for statehood. It has gone on for a very, very long period of time. But eventually they did, the aspirations of the people was finally recognized by the government, and Parliament passed, the resolution for this creation of the state. And I think that things like these are not solutions that can just happen, immediately. Everything takes time, but I think it's in the right direction. I feel that going by the past experiences, the past examples, I think that one day, very soon, I'm always a very optimistic person. I feel that one day, very soon, you will, find realization to the dreams that you have and the aspirations of the people of this region. I'm very positive towards it.
One question regarding writing of mother tongue. So, in our case, in Nepalese case, what happened in later part of the situation, many people started writing their own mother tongue. Instead of writing Nepali or Gorkhali, they started writing the dialect's name, etc. etc. No? So what the result that we are getting is the total number of Gorkhali in Nepali is coming down. So this time, what we want is, we would like to request all Nepali speaking people to write their mother tongue as Nepali or Gorkhali. Instead of writing Rai, Lembu, Tamang, like that. So, this is, so I request, in your state also, can we send a message to the people residing in your state to follow this instruction, follow this request, to write Nepali as mother tongue during census? This is my question, sir.
I think that here, when we talk about mother tongue and we talk about your own language in the census, now you are asking from my state's point of view, right? Whether we have not taken a call on that as of now, right? But I think in general, this is something that, I think, I don't know what the present status of it is, pardon me for my ignorance, but I think that the linguistic census, what is the status of that now? Yes. So I'm so sorry on this particular question. I'll have to get back to you. Yeah.
Sensitive question that Mr. Mohan has put up. In fact, if you look, there is a sensitivity of if you ask for it, if you get it, like rightly Honorable Minister put up by saying that different places. So here, what the question that you are asking us is about sending a message across to the state of Meghalaya, to the Nepalis, the Gorkhas of Meghalaya. That is what I can say you are asking, right? See, this is something which I feel, in fact, we've had this discussion across a lot of leaders and across a lot of organizations also. This has been put up to me also time and again. Because I think this is something which is in the pipeline. So what I feel is that first and foremost, all stakeholders has to be on board. The different people who are willing to do this, who are actually doing this, should be brought on board. And with everybody's agreement, if it has to be made into a national movement, or it has to be made into a national notification among the Gorkha fraternity, I think so this is something which has to be taken call by the different communities, because see, we cannot force people. We cannot force people, because this is subject to your choice. This is subject to your choice. So in this manner, definitely, if there is an agreement and if you submit us a representation, we can definitely advocate it. This is not difficult. But if it is for the larger good of the Gorkha community, but if it is going to have ramifications, and if it is going to be, if it's not going to be pleasant to some communities, so first and foremost, what I feel is to have a common language used as a mother tongue, which is, I think, you're advocating Nepali. So I think so for this, it is all stakeholders which has to come on board and have a common agreement. And I think so once that is, and I don't think so it is an issue at all. And we would love to help you for this, if it is for the larger interest of the community. Thank you. Okay, just for the record, I think so our Honorable Minister has just put up that the Gorkhas or the Nepali community of Meghalaya write Nepali as their mother tongue. Thank you. That is in Meghalaya, the problem is already solved.
Sorry, Mr. You want to ask a question? Good evening, Minister Sangha.
Hi.
My name is Sandeep Jain. I'm a freelance writer, journalist, and into a lot of, I wouldn't say political, but social activities.
Yeah.
First and foremost, let me tell you that I was one of the 5 people in Kalimpong with Kenza, Asank, and 2 others who actually attended the first meeting of the NPP. I kind of, like the idea of one Northeast. That is why I actually joined the, first meeting. But then I started to do some researches on, several aspects of NPP. And one of the things that, made me back out. The main reason, of course, is, being a journalist, I cannot be a, political activist. But I think the main reason, the other reason why I backed off was, I think, your association with the party in the center, right, the Bharatiya Janata Party, which, many like me, perceive to be a communal party. So let me, just ask this. What is your relation with the Bharatiya Janata Party, number one? And number two, once you answer that, can I, ask a supplementary question?
Yeah, sure.
So, sometimes you're accused of being B-team and stuff like that. But let me be very, very categorical here that the NPP, the National People's Party, has its own ideology. And our ideology is very, very much, I would say the foundations on which they're laid are very northeast centric, right? It is also very tribal centric of indigenous communities, although the word indigenous is not recognized in India. But for us, that is the kind of basis on which we have built upon our ideologies. And the NPP, if you look at what we believe in and how we have been propagating our party, it's very, very different from the ideologies of the BJP. Well, in a political environment, it's I think very inevitable that there will be political calculations, there will be some sort of an understanding whereby, as a political party, the mandate that we receive from the public is to serve the people. And for us, we stick to our ideologies, but to serve the people. In some states, we have been allies with the BJP, namely in Manipur, if you see. In the center, we are supporting the NDA. We are part and constituent of the NDA. But that does not mean that we think on the same lines. Definitely not. We have differed with them on many, many issues. the Citizenship Amendment Bill that came up, we have been very, very vocal that the northeast part of India is very, very badly affected by the CAA. Now it's an act. So we've been very, very vocal about that. So I don't know, maybe some people have the apprehension that we think alike and we are alike and we are BJP, but that's not true. We are very, very different. If you look at our electoral history, we've always contested against the BJP, right? We've always believed that that there are issues which pertain to like, for example, I'll just give you one example, like in terms of Christians in this country, which is less than 2% of the country, and there was a step by the BJP government in the center to have Good Governance Day to be celebrated on Christmas Day. Then they had another function on Good Friday. For us as Christians, that's a very holy day for us. It's a very solemn occasion for us. So we did not appreciate that. We were very, very vocal about our dissentment to that, and we said that. So to cut it short, we are not with the BJP. Yes, we support the BJP in the sector, but support does not mean it's totally unconditional. It is always based on conditions.
Thank you. With the NPP was because I firmly believe that the hills of Darjeeling have supported national parties in the past, and we've got nothing, right? Then we supported regional parties, got nothing. Then we supported local parties, and it was a very bad, example for all of us.
Yeah.
So my thought was that we should now try a party which incorporates the entire Northeast, which I think at the moment NPP is doing. So yeah, definitely I think as a town, as a person of the hills, I would feel that being a part of NPP, this area being a part of a political setup which encompasses the entire Northeast is very good. So now I'll ask you another question. See, as a journalist, I'm supposed to be asking very tough questions. So I hope you don't mind, because just a while back you said that you are not averse to taking hard questions. So one of the main agendas of the BJP is talking against dynastic politics, right? And frankly, the top three people in your party are from the same family. Does this not put you in conflict with the agenda of the BJP?
As partners of the NDA, we sort of embody dynastic politics. Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I'm not saying it is bad.
No.
No.
I understand you're not saying it's bad.
I'm not saying it is bad. Let me just reiterate this. I've always felt that the Gandhi family has done a lot for the country, and the Sangma family is now doing a lot for the NPP. I'm just talking about the BJP.
Yeah.
Whether they are being hypocrites, criticizing the same thing one place and then being partners in another place.
Okay, Sandeep. I won't go into that part, to judge another political party. But dynastic politics, the word dynasty, it denotes that the succession is passed on from one individual to his immediate son, daughter, whoever it is. That's like succession means from one to another individual, right? But in our family, my father has always felt that among us siblings, that's me, my brother and my sister, we competed with each other, right? It's been healthy competition for us, and my father never said or groomed one individual among us to be the successor. So it's like, okay, fine, you try your luck, you try your luck, you try your luck. You try, politics is not an easy thing. So he gave us this opportunity to compete with each other, and today all three of us are here in the NPP. So technically we're not really a dynasty, technically. But again, it's very easy to dismiss a concept like dynastic politics. But the reality of the matter is, when we are growing up as children, we are learning the tricks of the trade. You know, literally, we are literally hit the ground, hit the ground running.
You had a great example to follow.
Sorry, yeah, I mean, we did have examples to follow, but we also are, very, very, silently groomed. So I think that as the tricks of the trade of, say, a carpenter is passed on to his son, or any other trade craft, I think for us as children of politicians, we learn a lot of things from our children, and it becomes just so normal for us to follow in our parents' footsteps. So it's not really a bad thing, but then again, that's the beauty of democracy, because it's not my father who chose us to be leaders, it is the people who chose us to be their leaders. So that's the beauty of democracy.
Mr. James Sangma is here, but me being a part and parcel of the party and me being one of your fellow men, I think so it would be incomplete if I don't tell you a little bit about the party dynamics, how it works, and the equation of dynasty. Yeah? No, I'm good. See, as our Honorable Minister said, this is a very new party. It started in 2012. I think so, as NPP, we have fought just one election.
In 2013,
2013.
no, we fought two, in Rajasthan and Meghalaya.
Rajasthan and Meghalaya, 2 elections we fought. So this is a very young, a very new party. One of the reasons why I joined politics was because of NPP, and why I joined NPP was because I wanted to do something for my people, and I felt that this is the best party to tag along with if I wanted to do something for my people, since it is born and brought up from the womb of Mother Northeast, which we also have a belongingness to. Maybe technically we are not a part of Northeast, but we are the gateway to Northeast. And the times and circumstances have put the Sangmas to lead the party, not to run the party or rule the party. I am one of the biggest examples sitting just next to Mr. Sangma. There could have been another Sangma here with him today. But yes, they are very open to leadership, and they are very open of inclusive politics. And I think so, it's just a matter of time that they have bigger responsibilities, which we talk about time and again. They have bigger responsibilities for the people of Northeast besides being leaders in the party. But since this is a very new party and we did not have any other options, the commander, the governor and the foot shoulders had to be from the same family. So basically it is something, it's just a matter of time. Maybe we'll see a lot of things happening. We like today we are here in North Bengal, and gradually we're spreading to other parts of Northeast. So I really don't think so that Mr. P.A. Sangma had any hunger for power, and I really don't feel any of the Sangma brothers and sisters also. This is a people's party, and I think they are people's men. And like he rightly said, it is the mandate of the people which have made them leaders today. Thank you.
Okay, Basangma, another one.
Yes, please.
This is today, it's basically a date with you and NPP, right? You're trying to woo us, isn't it? So,
Yeah,
it's a
okay.
date with you. So tell us how, or rather with what would you want to woo us today?
Okay. So this is, I think, to woo the public is, I think, very foolish of any individual to think they can woo the public. I think today's public, because of social media, because of their access to the internet are so well informed, you can't woo them. All you can do is you can present yourself in front of them, and we spell out our ideologies, we spell out our vision, our dreams, and we leave it to all of you. And but having said that, today what we stand for, we are a party. If you look at the presence of our party spread across the Northeast, as you know, we are one of the 7 national parties in the country today. And we attained the status of a national party, I think, in record time. Except for the NCP, I think the only other political party to have actually achieved the status of national party is the NPP. And that also NCP was courtesy my late father, because we had our spread in the Northeast in so many states. But today, again, to really put forward our party in front of all of you, or to woo you, would be to actually tell you about our party. We are a national party. We are a very young party, young not just in terms of the duration of time where we've been around, but also in terms of our leaders. Our party is led by Mr. Conrad Sangma, who happens to be my younger brother, younger by 2 years. And all our leaders are very, very young. I think the oldest member, in terms of elected representatives, would be 57, 58 in terms of elected representatives, right? But we have many, many senior leaders also in the party. So we are a very young party in both terms. Our thought process is one of a lot of involvement. That's why this common platform is something I think many political parties don't do that. It's always a one-way monologue. So I come, I stand on a platform, I give my speech, and all of you, either you listen to me or you texting somebody on the mobile and finished. But here I feel that as a party, we like to engage people. We like to take tough questions. We are not willing to shy away from issues which other parties may just like to skirt around. But we like to take things head on. So that's in terms of our approach to things. Our ideology here as a political party is one of the vision that we see for our region. And I think it's very important that for me, as a person from the Northeast, as a person who shares so much, we may be very different in many ways, but I think in terms of our food, our culture, our outlook in life, our love for music, in terms of so many things, there are so many similarities that we share with the people of not just Northeast, but also this region. And I feel that many political parties have come. They have made a lot of promises. They have made claims that they know the region, they know the people, they know the challenges and difficulties, but I don't think so. I feel that it takes a person from this region to know the region, to understand its problem as an individual from the region, because it's so complex. It is so complex. And that is why we feel that the Northeast needs this platform. And this is experience of my late father as a parliamentarian for 3 generations, for more than 30 years, being in parliament, being a minister, being the speaker of Lok Sabha, and for us having grown up in Delhi, for having spent the latter half of our lives as representatives of our respective constituencies in the Northeast, having travelled the nook and corner of the Northeast, having friends from every corner of the Northeast, to really know and understand and really empathize and sympathize with our fellow brothers and sisters from this region. So I think that that is where the gap lies. And we as a party, we feel that we can fill up that integral gap, the understanding part. And only when you understand it can you then find solutions to it. So, look, I mean, I don't want to be critical of previous political parties or other political parties. That's not who we are. We are very positive. We don't believe in criticizing others. We believe in setting our own agenda and putting in front of people as to, okay, this is the positive agenda that we have. And our agenda is just this, that we want to engage with people and find solutions and find a political solution within the constitutional framework of our great country. That is what we are. And we believe that the Northeast is ready for it. It is the need of the hour. And today someone asked me, why? Why are you here in Kalimpong? Why are you here in this part of India? And I said that, look, the house can be beautiful, the rooms can be beautiful, you have great furniture, you've done up the interiors and everything. But if you have a door that is like ugly, that is not strong, that is won't offer you protection, that won't really give you that impression of what lies inside the house. If you don't give your time and attention to that door, the first impression, it doesn't matter how beautiful your house is. And that's what for us, this exercise is. That we are here to see the doorway, as Shashank put it, the doorway to the Northeast. Now if we don't put our focus and our attention to the doorway, I think we're doing grave injustice to what we plan for the entire northeastern part of India. Sandeep.
Yeah, just not a question, just a small complaint.
Ah,
Yeah.
this is new.
Well, thanking you for coming here all the way, and probably this is the first time a minister of any, government has come and interacted like this. I have a complaint. You didn't bring along with yourself Dr. Larik, my good friend.
Ah.
Sure, such a wonderful gentleman, and we've been conversing on the WhatsApp a lot. He's a really fine gentleman.
He is, definitely, and he's a dear friend of mine. But again, let me just clarify here. I'm not here as a minister, please, and don't address me as Mr. Minister. I'm here as, as NPP National General Secretary, and I think that is a role I play equally. I give equal importance to as a person who's the General Secretary. And today I apologize for not bringing Lalrin. Lalrin is a busy man. He is, got a lot of duties there as a doctor, so you can very well understand how busy he was. And secondly, he didn't get a connecting flight. But I will convey that, Sandeep. Your point taken and your complaint noted and will be passed on. I have a feeling you're just warming up. I have a feeling.
Mr. Sangma, and with the permission of everybody in this gathering, I am Arun Acharya. I live in a village here in Kalimpong. First of all, we welcome you, not only for a very small reason, but India is a very pluralistic society. And as a new political party that you've come up here, you've come with a new dimension. And it is an alternative we find to the mainline party. Basically, we understand the Congress and the BJP. And we, again, we have a lot of aspirations, we have a lot of hope from you, especially on two aspects. See, we know that the Khasis have their darbars and the Garos have their Nokmas and all that. And they started fighting right from the time of the British. They wanted to be away. And there were skirmishes, there were fights, we know a lot about it. But the hardball for Meghalaya politics was played from 1960 for getting a separate state. And within a matter of 8 years, they formed a state within a state, an autonomous state, which I think I was pretty young in those days, and the political leaders here wanted to talk about, see how it's worked out in Meghalaya. And by 1969 January, the autonomous state within a state was formed, and by 1972 you had a separate state. Now within the span of a decade, within 10 or 12 years, you were able to form a state with a hardball game. Now in our case here, it's a little bit different, because with the Khasis and with the Garos and with the Jaintiyas, they were there. But here we have a little bit of complex historical differences here. And we've been marginalized all the way. We've been used by the British. We've been used by India even after the independence. And we've been used now. And just because there's a country called Nepal that's bordering here, and they say that there's a lot of suspicion. First of all, I'd like to, let everybody know here. Sometime back in 1948-49, when Sardar Patel was the Home Minister, he came this side and then he made a report, he wrote a letter to the Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, stating specifically that the people of this region and the Northeast, they have suspicions about them with the loyalty towards India. So that letter lies within the Home Ministry, within the files, whoever goes there, the Undersecretary or the Secretary who studies, whenever they see a problem, they start digging from the file. And in the year 1952, when Jawaharlal Nehru visited here, the then Gorkha League party submitted a memorandum asking for a separate state. He said he'll look after that, and there was no reply to it. But then I found out, just reading a little bit later, that he gave a reply in the parliament in 1952. Jawaharlal Nehru stated that because once Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, of course was attached with the formation of the BJP and all that, he had objected. And not only the reason why they've objected, one of the reasons they say that it's written that one of these political leaders had been to Delhi to discuss about separating Darjeeling from Bengal to Assam, where even your Meghalaya was in Assam. So they wanted to go and meet Mr. Bordaloi, who was then the chief minister, and he was quite a big Congress stalwart. So they were waiting in his bungalow, and when he was outside, and then when Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was sitting out there, and then he asked them, why have you come? He said, we want to discuss about it. And then he just straight away he said, well, every state has got a hill station, and Darjeeling is the hill station of Bengal, nothing doing with it. So they've always been marginalizing it, and that kind of suspicion, and even that Nehru in his reply, he said that it was a nuisance, and he totally agreed to Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, and he's not going to give a state. That cannot be done. Now there is one thing that we got to understand, that this mindset has been set in the administration of the government of India, that these people don't have any loyalty to the country, that they look across the borders, beyond that, how can we wipe it out? The other thing that we expect, if you want to come to this area and you want to help us for the Northeast and all that, so the other thing that we want to, how you were able to form a state within a state, what was your strategy, what went wrong, why can't we get over the suspicion that the rest of the government of India has, and inside the Home Ministry, when they dig into the file, the first thing they come is that we can't trust these people. Now this is one of the core issues we've got to think of, and maybe we can work it out, and this is the only way I think we can do it, because we got to get rid of suspicion, and we got to need your experience, how we were able to form a state within a state, and then that's all.
Wonderful words, and I can't but help agreeing with you in terms of the thought process that is there, that exists towards our people. When I say our people, it means collectively, all of us. And very unfortunate that even today also, that still exists, Mr. Acharya. We feel it in our bones. And this is something that's very unfortunate. Why? Because it's not individual communities, but the entire region, Gorkhas, for us as Garos, Khasis, the Akomiyas, the, let me call it Nagas, Manipuris, everyone from this region has contributed to our nation, has made our nation proud in some way or the other, in many, many various aspects and various fields. And yet, sometimes we feel that we are not recognized for it. Sometimes we feel that we are being neglected and still looked upon with suspicion, as you rightly said. And I agree with you, And this is something that really hurts us also, because we are very proud Indians. I'm very proud to be an Indian, and today I'll die for my country. But sometimes when you see this kind of attitude, this kind of suspicion that takes place, it's very unfortunate that today many people still feel that the moment you empower this region, the political landscape of this region will change, because we share an international boundary with so many other countries. But then the people of our region are true nationalists, they are true patriots. I've seen so many of them. Our boys, our brothers have laid down their lives for the country. Our sportsmen have brought laurels and medals to the country. The kind of culture that we have contributed to, culturally we have contributed to the country is immense, be it in the field of literature, be it in the field of art, be it in the field of anything, everything. And today, that is something that really hurts, and I can feel that pain in what you just said. Coming to the how did we in a decade's time manage to get our own statehood? That is something that I believe that it was so long ago. There are very few people left who know about the struggle of the statehood movement, but it's documented definitely. And this is something we would love to share with you. We would love to share that. And if there is a way in which, these kind of initiatives, or the struggle that took place is helpful in any way, I think it will be very, very nice in the fitness of things. But I truly believe that today it's time for us to start looking past the negativity and to start looking at the positive side of things. That today you are at a certain point and you have come so far, and there is just that just little bit of few more steps that needs to be taken. And I feel that let us take that with a positive attitude. Let us not go back into the negativity of the past, because we can keep going on and on and on about how the past has been very bad for us and how we've been mistreated and all that. But I think it's important that we now start looking at the future in a positive manner and not let that past affect our future thinking. So that's one thing that I believe in. But that's again my personal opinion. Many of maybe other leaders in the party may not agree, or people in general may not agree. But that's what I believe in. And yes, we would love to share our 12 years of struggle for our statehood and how we did it in a very non-violent way, and we managed to get our statehood in 12 years. And I again, as I would like to repeat that, I feel that yes, this struggle that you are going through will bear fruit one day. So if I missed out anything, Mr. Acharya, please you can interject at any time. Or did I miss out any of your questions or your principal,
No, basically, you see, we've been in this struggle, and we're clear about it. But somewhere in between, we've missed it. And the main thing that we missed it is, of course, the state would not like to separate from us like every other state. Even Bihar, Lalu Prasad was saying it will be on my death on my dead body. Even Assam also, for a lot of time. Not only Meghalaya, it was Nagaland, it was the Lusai Hills, Mizoram and all that. It came, but here we have a different problem altogether. And now this is where we want to need the help. I've been telling a lot of our friends, this idea of mistrust from the mainstream Indian politicians about us being in the borders and the fringe, it should go away. Because that's what happens whenever a problem comes, it goes to the Home Ministry, and then it goes to the, from the secretary down to the undersecretary level.
Yes.
And they have a file, they have a guard file, they start looking at the file.
Yes.
And then even the newcomer, when he looks at the file, he looks first at Sardar Patel's letter, and then Nehru, and then they built it up that way. So that mindset is already set there. How do we wipe it out? I mean, you can help us by saying that you can wipe it out.
Yes.
And then, guessing have been going in the right direction. One of these things was the 1950 Indo-Nepal Friendship Treaty, in which there is a reciprocality. The Nepalese can come to India, they can do business. Similarly, the Indians can do that and all that. The government of Nepal also doesn't want it. Here also, we don't want it here. Of course, that might be a different thing because of the Gurkhas that are being used here. Now, your party can help us by, taking out that mistrust. We're as much Indians as an Indian from UP or Maharashtra, or you are as much Indians. But when you go to Delhi, or even when I go, when you have that Mongoloid face and all that, I mean, you know the kind of experience. When I speak Nepalese, they always say that I'm a Nepalese. And when I talk about I'm an Indian Nepalese, what do you mean Indian Nepalese? So there is that kind of a difference. If you want to help us, the first thing is that the suspicion that we have the loyalty towards the country should go away, and that idea that is already rooted inside, we got to wipe it out. That's all. If you can help in that, I think that would be a great step towards achieving this.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Acharya. And today I grew up in Delhi, and I would face brunt of racial discrimination in that way as a child growing up. And when you grow up as a child, it has a very, very negative aftertaste, bad taste in your mouth it leaves behind as you're growing up. But today I've been able to overcome that. And today I feel that, things are still the same, but we need to start, trying to change the attitude of people in the nation, not by reacting to it, but then by building up positivity. So now, as a political party, that is exactly what we feel, that the Northeast will always be misunderstood. You can't expect a person from Gujarat, with due respect to them, with a person from the southern part of India or from the northern part of India, to understand us, our culture, our Mongolite features. You can't. You have to be a person from here, and that's what we aim to do. And that the only way to find a solution to this is numbers, unfortunately. There's only a political solution, and it's only by being a party with the kind of numbers to back you will you be heard. The Northeast is made up of so many states. Meghalaya has 2 MPs in the Lok Sabha, Nagaland has 1 MP, Assam has 15. So it's like these numbers, you add them up, yes, they become a formidable number. But on their own, nothing. That's what we feel, that as a political party, we need to bring people together. And our slogan has always been one voice, one Northeast. And the voice is the voice which needs to be heard in Parliament. And that voice has to be a chorus of all the MPs put together of the Northeast. And we have to fight for ourselves. There's no point in saying that we are misunderstood. There's no point in saying that people of Northeast are neglected. We have to take things in our own hand by coming together under one political platform. That's the need of the hour. That's what we feel as a party, that until unless all of us can unite, and we feel that the NPP is the answer. and we've done so successfully, by having a presence in states like Manipur, which is so diverse, right? There's so many communities, but then we've been able to go there. We've been able to win seats there, 4 seats, and we see that yes, there is a ray of hope for the Northeast. And today, the country, the Congress Party, unfortunately, is having a huge leadership crisis. We don't know what's going to happen. Although for the country, it's important to have a strong opposition, but that is not happening. So, what's going to be the future of the country? So that's where we feel that it needs to have a party from the Northeast to come up to be the voice of the Northeast, and that's the only way we can change the mindset. So let me just add to that. When my late father was the Speaker of Lok Sabha, it made a lot of difference. I mean, people used to come up to us and say that, Meghalaya is a state in India. I mean, people didn't know Meghalaya existed. And my father, when he's the Speaker of the Lok Sabha, it brought about this sudden, awareness about the Northeast among people. And they said that one of the biggest things that your father did for us, and this is like from different parts of Northeast, people coming and telling us that it was that this awareness about Northeast, that Northeast exists, that there are people like P.S. Sangma, like S.C. Jamir, like Tarun Gogoi, like different leaders from the Northeast who are there, who are very, very powerful and powerful leaders who have contributed so much to the country. So I'm sorry, I think you wanted to say something.
No, one aspect is when you talk about numbers. The other aspect which I noticed, which I've been studying, is that here in India, when we talk of the mainstream politics or the mainstream Indians or the cow belt, whatever it is, you try yourself as a party out there. But what the Northeast can do, I've worked in the Northeast for 5 years.
In Meghalaya also?
I beg your pardon?
Did you work in Meghalaya?
I was based in Guwahati. I was looking after the entire Northeast. I was working in technology mission.
Oh, okay.
We were looking after horticulture of the entire Northeast, including Meghalaya and Sikkim. But what I noticed was that one thing we've gone wrong is that there are a lot of people who feel marginalized and left out, and they don't have much of a say in India. And one of the strong things that if we can make a strong tie-up with politicians from your level, with Tamil Nadu, they also have a lot of grudge. So we have a lot of things on the fringes that we can exert our pressure to. So number game can come up if we look at that angle also.
Yeah.
But my sincere hope is it should be inclusive in all the way, and our request here from everybody, from Kalimpong, from Darjeeling, from Assam and all that, this idea of suspicion that is rooted there inside the file, it should be taken out.
Correct.
It should be taken out, and we should tie up with the South and with the fringes.
Thank you.
Mr. Sangma, first of all, welcome to this part of this country, and we also thank you for visiting this place, for interaction with the people of this place. I have some questions to you. First of all, as you told us that NPP is in support of creation of smaller states, and you support that. We sleep with the dream of Gorkhaland, wake up with the dream of Gorkhaland. And during daytime we talk Gorkhaland. So this is our imagination, this is our feeling we have, and this is throughout this territory. But politically we are so weak, we contribute half MP and 3 MLAs. So politically in the national scenario we are very, very weak in our representation. Therefore, we need people and the parties who could support this cause outside the jurisdiction of this place to make a substantial force in the parliament and elsewhere. So my question to you is, to support this cause, as NPP is supporting creation of smaller states, and I believe you support Gorkhaland as well, is it possible to pass a resolution in the Meghalaya Assembly supporting the cause of Gorkhaland, like what it happened in this Sikkim State Assembly. Secondly, in order to give emphasis to the promise of NPP, is it possible to make a national resolution of NPP in this political party resolution supporting creation of Gorkhaland? My third point is, Meghalaya was created in early 70s, and the mode of agitation we have observed, and that during that time MLA had 4 MLAs to the Assembly. So I could read that the 4 MLAs repeatedly resigned in support of creation of state of Meghalaya. So how effective it was when the MLAs were resigning for the creation of the state of Meghalaya, how effective this move was. Please let us know. Thank you so much.
Okay, in terms of resolution for the Meghalaya Assembly, see that's something that for us as a political party, yes, you know, as I said, we are supporting the movement, but the relevance of that for us, Meghalaya passing a resolution does not make sense. Let me be very blunt about it, right? But as a party, yes, we are. And in line with that, I don't know if some of you are aware, all of you are aware of the fact that our national president, Mr. Conrad Sangma, went out of his way to write a letter to the Honorable Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah. And this is dated 14th of September 2020, last year. And okay, this was also received by them. And in this, our national president has made it very clear that, we look to the union government to bring a resolution to this long pending demand. And we have written very much in favor of it, saying that the Gorkha community has contributed so much to the nation, and it is very much in the fitness of things to, I will circulate this letter, right, if you wish to read it. And we are very much in support of this. And a national resolution from the political party, yes, that is something that Mr. Dewan, we can definitely explore, and we can definitely take it up. We can speak about it in Parliament. I think that my sister, who is she's the 3rd time MP in Lok Sabha now, and if the opportunity comes up, I'm very sure that we will be very unambiguous and very categorical in our support of smaller states, and especially this demand. So in terms of national resolution, yes, we can explore that, and that's an idea I'm taking back with me. But of course, I don't have the liberty of saying yes or no. But yes, it's a great idea, I feel personally. You asked the third point about whether the process of resignation of 5, you said, or 4? Was it 4? I'm so sorry. 4 MLAs during that time, did it help? I would say yes, it did. It made a huge impact. It not just in terms of laying stress on the kind of importance of the issue, in terms of saying that yes, this is what we want, the seriousness, but also in terms of paving the way for Government of India to the State Reorganization Committee to go about their work. So it made a lot of difference, definitely. But this is something that you have to take up with your legislators, with your representatives, and I don't know if anyone would be willing to resign in today's day and age. That's very rare. I've never seen things like that happening these days. There were these days when train accident would take place and the Honorable Minister of Railways would take moral responsibility and tender his resignation, but you don't see that happening now. Of course, sometimes people can go a little too far in terms of demanding for resignation also. But yes, I think that it would definitely help. It would. It would bring back the discussion on track. It would also, show the seriousness of people, and elected representatives are the voice of the people. We give our vote to our representatives so that all of us can't go to the assembly, all of us can't go to the parliament, and we send our messages through our elected representatives. So that sends a very powerful message. So
Thank you, sir.
I hope I answered your questions, Devan. Yeah.
Minister, I have a question. And since we're talking about ray of hope for the Northeast, as well as for this district of Darjeeling, as well as your adjoining areas, so we get to hear a lot about permanent political solutions these days from different media houses as well as from various political leaders. So could you throw some light on this, whether it would be a state, a UT, or merger with Sikkim? We get to hear about permanent political solution for us. Okay.
I got your question. That you have placed a demand, right? The people of this region have placed a demand, and I think that the solution to this is definitely somewhere in between, somewhere wherein within the framework of the constitution, things can be worked out, and at the same time find acceptability among the people of this region, and also be permissible under the framework. So I think that to answer your question, it doesn't really depend on me to say, okay, what is the solution, permanent solution. The permanent solution lies in dialogue and finding a solution that is acceptable to all within the constitution. So, Mr. Paul, it's a question really. For me to say that no, it should be a UT, but Article 3 I think does not mention anything about UTs. So then, if you ask about state, yes, state reorganization committees can take it up and can study it and then give their recommendations, and Parliament then passes the resolution, and so that all these things have to be within the Constitution of India. Yeah.
Conversation a while back about sharing thoughts. So sitting here, I was trying to get back and share thoughts with you.
Thank you, sir.
One was to discuss what you have come here for and know the people's mind. That is all right. The second question is about the state formation. You referred to state formations a while back, about the concept of state formation in India. No? So here, I think since I've done a little reading on that, so from my observation, the state formation is not a guaranteed legality of the constitution. So you mentioned about smaller states. So can any small state be formed without the constitutional rights guaranteed by the constitution itself? That is my question. So we have to go within the parameters of the constitution to demand a state. And in that context, my perception is that states are formed on the base, firstly, only if you study all the state formation in India, we have said basically it's based on languages. But if you look into the legality of the right, it is only under the provision of the 5th and 6th schedule only. That is my perception. So without that, I think no states can be formed. This is my perception. So the new state formation, the small state formation, this is not perceptible. It has to be within the framework of the 5th and 6th schedule. So this is all the states are formed within the program. I think 4 states were formed in East India. The rest is all under the 5th schedule in the rest of India. Though language was the issue, claimed as the right. But basic legality lies within these two provisions. So I think I'd like your views on this.
As you rightly put, Mr. Pemba, right? Mr. Pemba. Yeah. So, Mr. Pemba, as you rightly put it, it has to be, within that framework, as you rightly put it. But then again, you know, it's at the end of the day, it all boils down to the politics of it all. And the way is clear, which way we need to progress and which way we need to take it up with. But what you lack are numbers. What you lack is the kind of support system that you need. The platform, you know, which is lacking, I think, here. Again, not to be critical of many political parties who come, they make promises and they say that yes, we will take it up. But then at the end, it does not happen, you know. The reality of the matter is that maybe they do lack the conviction, maybe they lack the, you know, the belief that yes, it is genuine, it's just lip service. So what you require today is to be, you know, to align yourself with a platform which can take this forward. So we as a political party, yes, you may say that the NPP is no different from the other parties and say that yeah, they here also they'll just do lip service, they'll make you know, they'll make tall claims and promises. But we're not like that. I mean, our stand is not from now. Mr. Acharya went back to Mr. Mukherjee's you know, notings and the note which is lies with NHA. But for us, if you go back to our history, we've always stuck to this claim. There has been no digressing from this, no deviation from this, and we've taken, you know, this issue very seriously right from the start. So when I say that, yes, you know, when you're looking for a platform, we need to find that kind of platform, and that is what is required. It's not. I feel that the way is very clear. And many of you have, you know, they're eminent jurists here, they're lawyers and legal experts here. All of you have collectively, you know, have given it so much of thought over so many years, decades, that you have the roadmap in front of you. It's just who's going to carry that roadmap to Parliament. So that's where the lacuna lies, or that's where the gap lies.
So I'd like to follow up, I'll give you another follow-up. It's not a question, it's a statement. That in 2012, the fifth schedule, a portion of the fifth schedule has already been implied in the entire state of West Bengal. Part B4C. So which means we are already heading towards the end. So that's my request mainly, that I think your political organization and maybe your other organization of the hill area, particularly Darjeeling, they have to appeal and see that the provisions of the fifth schedule are implemented by amending Article 360. That seems to be the end of the provisions of the fifth schedule. Simple.
Thank you.
QED.
Thank you.
Is, will you be contesting this MLA elections? Will your party be fielding a candidate number one? If so, like you mentioned that you are in favor of smaller states, but will your manifesto, whether it's the MLA election or the MP elections, will your manifesto be very categorical enough to support the idea of Gorkhaland? Because we have seen even national parties are very jittery when it comes to committing about Gorkhaland, because in the hills they talk about Gorkhaland, but once they go down to Siliguri, they don't utter a word about Gorkhaland. Yeah? So maybe that is also one reason. Narendra Modi told like Gorkha ka sapna mera sapna is still a dream, and another gentleman came with a manifesto saying that the long pending demand will sympathetically consider and this and that. That's what we call Shabd Zal. Like they are just So another 5 years down the line, again they said permanent political solution. Now that's also very vague. What is permanent for me may not be permanent for him. So in the end they did not utter the word of Gorkhaland. But let me assure you, the aspiration of Kalimpong, Darjeeling or Tera and Dwarves is separation from Bengal. So if at the cost of South Bengal, will your party be brave enough to openly say that we support the idea of Gorkhaland?
we come with a hope here that we will be setting up candidates in this region, and we come with the hope that our ideas will find resonance in the hills and also in the plains. We come with the hope that we will find that acceptability. So depending on that, yes, we will be putting up candidates. To answer your second question, in terms of our manifesto, I think that manifesto is a promise. It's a very sacred document for a political party. And we have always held the belief that ambiguity in the manifesto of any political party tantamounts to a false promise, because you're not saying yes, neither are you saying no. You want to take the middle path and you want to be politically correct. And so I won't make any comments right now. When our manifesto does come about, you will know how serious we are, and whether we as a political party are, you can paint us in the same brush as others. When the time comes, you will know. So I would rather not say that right now. But yes, we have the courage to say we need to separate from South Bengal. We have the courage to say that.
Thank you.
Let me take last 3 questions.
Last 2 questions.
Understand our mind and the core demand of this region that has been for the last more than 100 years. You have been saying, like Telangana had a lot of sacrifice, and in a very short time they got their own states.
Very long.
No, but very long time means it may be 30 years. That is, if I'm not mistaken, it's not even more than 30 years. But our struggle is more than 100 years. And let's not go back to the history. And this region, Darjeeling, before Kalimpong becoming a separate district, we have been supporting NDA. We have sent 3 MPs. But their voice is very feeble, maybe because of out of 400 something MPs, their voice is very feeble, and nobody been heard about our grievances. What I like to know, since you have said just now, the unity, we must be united, and this 7 sisters of Northeast, if they all combine together, and that is what you probably wants to do that. If we all combine together and make one voice, and if you take the lead, and if you speak in the parliament as a one force, and I'm sure the government will listen to our outstanding long demand, a separation of from Bengal, and that is our core demand, and that will be, if that is true, and if you say that yes, if you can take the lead, and we'll follow you, and we'll give all support if that brings us happiness and separate from West Bengal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. Say that that whatever we're doing will be able to bring about that change, and we also sincerely believe in that, and that's the passion that drives us. And we are of that firm belief that it's the parliament, and your representatives, again, I don't want to be critical of them, but you have elected them thrice, and I think neither of them ever uttered a single word in parliament in favor of this movement, correct? If I'm not wrong, I mean someone must be following them, and that's so true. But my late father, who was never a representative of Darjeeling, he has advocated for smaller states, for your state also. And today, it's a single voice makes no difference, even if it was a very powerful and a voice like P.A. Sangma. It will be a number game, as you rightly put it, Mr. Uday, that it has to be the Northeast, 7 states, Sikkim, and North Bengal. That has to come together and speak with one voice. That is a very, very powerful group. That is a very powerful group, and that's what we are looking at. So thank you so much for your support. Sorry.
He sends his apologies, unable to attend. Request Minister. He has sent 2 requests. Include Kalimpong and Darjeeling district in North-East Council, states. That is one request he has sent. The second request is provide fund support for our region to North-East Development Council. These are the 2 requests sent by Dr. Miku Fane. He is the president of Horticultural Society and he is connected with many social organizations. Thank you.
To reply, or to sort of to reply to whatever he said, we feel, I think, without any iota of doubt, that this region should have been part of the Northeast. It should have been. I don't know why it's a part of North Bengal, or we are culturally so similar. We look the same. I don't think that anyone is going to say that I'm from Meghalaya sitting here. All of you would think I am from Kalimpong. I can just walk the streets of Kalimpong right now. And the fact that that we have shared this close affinity and this bond for so many years, I believe that it should have been ideally part of Northeast for a very long time. But anyway, better late than never. So coming to NEC. NEC as a body, as we all know, the Northeastern Council, included Sikkim also in its, earlier there were only 7 sisters, the 8th sister was added later on. And once we come together and we share a same platform, I assure you that we will, as a party, we will fight tooth and nail for that also. We will.
Is actually on the same lines. Whether we can ever be part of the Northeast Council without being a separate state. Okay? It's a very pertinent thing because now that the NPP is here, okay, and I'm also one of the members in the party wanting to, wanting the NPP to flourish in our region. I think the pertinent question for everyone over here would be, has the NPP actually been doing anything of that sort to get us included in this council? Well, first question is whether it is possible at all. The second thing, if it is possible, then who makes the first step? Do we make a demand that we be made a part of the NPP, part of the Northeast Council? Or is it the NPP, who is now the major stakeholder in our region, let's say, in the Northeast, who will take steps, active steps, to help us get included in the Northeast Council?
I will be learning a lot about the region, about the kind of the aspirations that are there. And one of those aspirations today is being brought forward by Mr. Miku, who sent a message, and you have also been, you have also again mentioned about inclusion in the NEC. So to be honest, see, this is a very technical thing, whether it can be without being a state. So as far as my knowledge goes, no, but I may be wrong here. And whether as a political party, now that we know about it, will we be pushing for it? Yes, we will be pushing for it. But then again, so this is something that I only came across today in this interaction with all of you, that there is sort of a feeling among the people here that NEC should include this region also within its group. So I cannot say much about the technical part, but yes, we will be pushing for that.
Right, thank you.
In your grand scheme of designs, are we looking at in near future or maybe far, unified Northeast and a greater Northeast? with Darjeeling having its western outpost. Be frank, please.
Yes. I think that
Eventuality.
Yes.
Is it going to be a great northeast? That's what I. In the thing, the eventual design or the product.
I'm not very clear about your question.
No, is it going to be a unified northeast?
A unified northeast. Now, unified can mean many things. Unified can mean one geopolitical region. I don't think you mean that, right?
Ethnic, credentials.
See, to have one geopolitical entity, that is, I don't think that's possible. But these individual states can always be united in whatever we feel, we think, we want, and and in terms of sending across our demands. That way, unified, yes. Not a geopolitical entity.
No, what Mr. Kumai said, I support him very from the heart. What Mr. Kumai just said,
Yes.
I support him from the heart.
Yes.
So on the civil lines, this was the question.
Yeah, but then yes, unified in that sense that we all come together under one political platform. Yes, and that's why we're here. We're here because we feel that this region should be a part of the Northeast, and I think I was very clear. When I was asked that do we, in terms of the NEC, that would give it some sort of an official status of being a part of Northeast if it is included in the NEC, Northeastern Council. And when we say that yes, we are for that and we will be pushing for that, it means that we as a political party feel that yes, it should be a part of Northeast and be the western frontier of the Northeast, as you put it. Yeah.
The outpost.
The outpost. Yes. Thank you. Yeah.
Happy to see you, Mr. Sangma, here in Kalimpong. And I'm Neeraj Mukhi, as Sasank said, a friend of Sasank and a social worker in Kalimpong. I would, the feeling, I would rather say this is a lesser question and more of a feeling that I'll be expressing with you. We here in the region have been, like everybody has said, aspiring for a dream. I actually call myself an agitation generation. We've been born in this agitation. I've been going on until date. I've probably lost a lot of hair on my forehead, but still, this thing still has been going on. And every time the elections draw closer, we get to see big leaders here. From the present Home Minister, he'd been here and then they come here with a bag full of promises. But like we've been discussing, nothing has been fulfilled so far. And we've been battered with false promises and disappointments. And unfortunately, because we've been through so much, we've lost hope on all national parties. And in the present, in the local political parties don't seem to have a big score as well. So in this political scenario, I just was thinking, how do we trust NPP? Because on a very individual level, you could see the very introduction, I've got very good friends in NPP. On an individual level, I trust my friends with my life. I know they'll take a bullet for me. But for our region, for our people who've been so used to being let down, how do we trust you? That's all.
To speak on behalf of your generation, of all the youth of this region, and of all the elders here also, of having gone through the sense of betrayal over and over and over again. And to say that, yes, trust me 100%, is again the same old rhetoric that's repeating itself, correct? And we understand that. We understand the fact that we as a party we don't believe in making promises, number one. We don't believe in making promises that we feel is outside our hands, is outside our domain. But we believe in saying something that if we were to come together and stand unitedly, we could make a difference. Now the difference is, in the past, there have been parties that have come, be it the BJP or the Congress, and they have, as expected of them, electoral promises they make that they will do this and they'll do that, and they have not kept their promises, right? And for us, where do we go? It's very easy for the BJP, a national party having so many MPs, for the Congress party having presence in literally every state of the country, for them to make promises and then say, okay, fine, it's inconvenient, I'm going to wriggle myself out of this uncomfortable situation and not come back and I don't have to answer to the people. But for us, no. We are from the Northeast. Where do we go? We are answerable because we are here. We're not going anywhere. We are a party that we were born in the Northeast. Today we are a national party because of the fact that we have our presence in Nagaland, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh and Meghalaya. 4 states you need to be state recognized party to have the status of a national party. That's one of the criteria. And today we are a national party because of the region and our people and the Northeast. So where do we go? We are not fly-by-night operators. Definitely not. And we are a very young team, as I mentioned earlier. And for us, we see the growth of our party, not this next 4, 5, 6 years. We are looking at the growth of the party for the next 50, 60 years. And if we are thinking long term like that, we can't make promises and one day be held accountable for making those false promises and being questioned by the people and saying, oh, what about what you said? If we are to seriously bring our party to that kind of a level. And thirdly, today I genuinely feel, because today I have spent my, I am from the Northeast and I understand the pain of the people of Northeast more. Maybe not as good as you, I will not lie about it, but definitely more than somebody who's been parachuted into Darjeeling from Delhi. So definitely more than them. At least I can vouch for that. So I think that yes, you're absolutely right. How do you trust us? And trust is a very, very difficult thing to earn. It's very easy to break, you can break it in an instant, but to earn it, it takes years and years and years. And today, I don't seek to immediately earn your trust in overnight, but I seek to earn your trust by slowly building up on our relationship, by building up on communications with you, engagements with you, and step by step taking up things which will build up confidence in our party. So this is not something that today I am saying that please trust us. No, we will move in a positive direction, and we hope that one day you will earn our trust. Because for us, principles, trust, these are very, very important factors for our political party. I don't know if you've been following our party or not, but whatever we stand by, we have always stood by it no matter what. My father was like that. He said, for an origin issue, Srimati Sonia Gandhi, I do not agree to this. And he stuck to his guns. And a lot of people say he lost the opportunity to be, maybe the Home Minister of the country, to be maybe the Prime Minister of this country. If he had stuck on in the Congress party, he was much more senior than any other leader, including Mr. Pranab Mukherjee. He was a congressman from the beginning. He was somebody who stuck with the Congress, never left the party like late Pranab Mukherjee, which I don't want to comment about. But that is the kind of sacrifice that he made. He said that I will stick to my thing, and that's what we also have imbibed that. We also believe in that. The trust and our principles. These are two things that we will never compromise on. But again, only time will tell. And I hope that one day we will earn your trust. You will begin to trust us. And for us, as I said, politics is our calling. It is not our profession. We believe that this is something that we have to do. We owe it to people. It's not because I see it as a job. I don't. So I hope that one day we will earn your trust. I hope so.
I'll request Sri Vishal Kirpaju to say more thanks and conclude.
Okay, on behalf of Kalimpong District Unit of National People Party, I would like to thank all of our esteemed guests for attending this common platform meet program and making it a healthy and fruitful. I hope you all agree on this. Your presence has been a learning curve for all of us today. Whatever shortcomings we had, we sincerely apologize for the same and look forward for such meet with our national leaders in the future. Our special thanks to our founding father of National People's Party, late Sri P.A. Sangmaju. Special thanks to Sri Conrad K. Sangmaju, National President for the National People Party and Chief Minister Meghalaya. Special thanks to Sri James P.K. Sangmaju, General Secretary of National People's Party and Honorable Minister in the Government of Meghalaya. Also special thanks to Srimati Agatha Sangmaju, Member of Parliament from National People's Party. Special thanks to Sri Sasank Gatraju, ex-MOS of Nagaland and Secretary, Minority Affairs and in charge of North Bengal and Sikkim of the National People's Party. Thank you all for making this event a grand success, and we request now all of our esteemed guests to join us for dinner. Yeah, thank you.